Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Coaxum Report. I'm Terry Coaxum, I'm the host of the Coaxum Report. You can check us out on Android, Apple, Roku. We're on our TV network. I encourage you to download the app. You can also catch us on the radio at WSTX Bloomberg. And we're on the marketplace. I have the honor and the pleasure to have a super phenomenal woman on the line today, Caitlin Kane. Caitlin Kane is the VP at List and a director of Rural List. But more importantly, she's my sister from another mister. So I'd like to welcome Caitlin Kane. Caitlin.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for being a part of the Coaxum Report. Oh my God, it's super amazing to have you on. To all of those that are listening, you can catch us on Amazon Fire TV, on Android TV, Apple TV, and Roku. And again, you can catch us on the radio at WSTX Bloomberg. And one of our partners is Tempo, and you can catch us on our TV network. But it's an honor and a pleasure to have my sister from another mister. Caitlin, what you doing these days? What you up to?
Well, we're enjoying the weather in beautiful New Orleans, based here in New Orleans, Louisiana, but
Yes.
have been traveling pretty extensively throughout all of my rural communities. I represent a lot of rural investment for LISC, which is the Local Initiative Support Corporation. Actually, it's one
Awesome.
of the country's largest community development financial institutions.
Oh,
So
nice.
we, yeah. So we do a lot of investment work all throughout the country. We're in 49 states plus Puerto Rico and USVI.
Oh,
And we really focus in on really providing access to capital to underserved areas, rural and urban alike. And I oversee a lot of the rural investment.
awesome. You know what, Caitlin? That's great. To those that have just joined us, Caitlin and I share. We were a part of the Obama administration. We're part of the Seven Sisters, that were the regional advocates for small business administration. And when you say access to capital, Caitlin, that just like ding, ding, ding. Wasn't that? That was the number one barrier for business here in the New York region, New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, of course, where you are in New Orleans and throughout the country. Small businesses were always saying that access to capital was one of the number one barriers. So, it's phenomenal that now that you're playing in a space and list where you're actually offering that development. Huge, huge, huge deal. So talk to us. I mean, how is that going? Talk to me about some of the barriers to access to capital so we can offer some solutions. This show is all about solutions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what we see really coming out during COVID, and especially kind of coming out of COVID, really were the pronounced disparities,
Ah,
specifically in our rural communities when it
mm-hmm.
comes to access to capital issues for small businesses. And not just access to capital, but some of those other key infrastructure elements that really help, determine the success of a small business, such as
Mm-hmm.
broadband, right?
That's right.
Digital skilling. So all of these things became so much more pronounced during times of disaster, COVID
That's
being one
right.
of our most pressing disasters. It continues to this day, but also natural disasters. So when we think of small business supports, it's really critical that we think about those sort of supports in a very holistic manner. So access to capital is absolutely key.
Mm-hmm.
Having that level of flexible, long-term capital, especially in rural communities, is
That's right.
essential. And I think the role of a community development financial institution is really important. And CDFIs have been around for a while, coming out of the CRA. So we are entities that are essentially like mission-oriented banks.
Mm-hmm.
So we're
That's true.
non-depository as a LISC corporation, but we really focus heavily on providing resources to these underserved areas and especially specifically that wraparound technical assistance. So that's really
Mm-hmm.
our key
Awesome.
differentiator. So we can deploy capital in terms of lending and grants, but what you get in addition to that is technical assistance, which is just as important as the access to those sort of funds. And so that's what I'm really hearing from the rural communities when I'm touring, when I'm talking with a lot of our partners, is yes, absolutely. Flexible capital is crucial. So micro lending
Right.
also is very
That's right.
dominant and very important in this space. But it can't just be capital alone. The resources, the human knowledge, the access to that greater network is just as important. So technical assistance and capacity supports have to be considered when we're thinking about how do we deploy capital in an effective manner.
Oh my, this is amazing. In fact, this is super amazing because you're speaking my language right now. One of the things that we came across here, especially in the New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, and Connecticut, and throughout, broadband. So when COVID happened, a lot of amazing companies jumped right in, and they offered, especially to our education system, to our students, they offered them tablets, they offered them some way to get onto the network, and then they realized there was no broadband. So we had to rethink how we were deploying those resources. And because one of my senators, Senator Kevin Parker, actually put a bill forward that broadband was essential. So just like you wouldn't cut off anyone's gas and electric during COVID, you couldn't cut off the broadband, because that was the way that people were communicating, and it put a spotlight on the disparities and the places where individuals of color live. And so, I mean, you're speaking my language when you're saying that list is providing, more than just financial capital. They're looking at the technical support, which is what we looked at a lot with SBA, with the small business development centers. SCORE was a part of SBA back then as well. And there was a lot of technical support for individuals that just didn't have the technological savvy to be able to move forward in their business. COVID put a spotlight on that. If you did not have a pay system in place when that foot traffic stopped, so did your business. And so making sure that businesses were where they had a square or some sort of system in place. The biggest for my business, with my business development and my consulting firm with Coaxum Connects, Wi-Fi. There were businesses that didn't feel like they needed Wi-Fi until everything shut down, and they were like, "Wait a minute, we need a website. We need more than just the Wi-Fi. We need a website. We need Wi-Fi. We need a pay system. All those things that you tried to get us to get in the beginning, we need that now." And so what I hear you saying is Lisk is offering all of those things through a holistic approach. They're not just taking this from the CDFI, okay, we're going to give out microloans and grants and information. You're giving more than that. You're giving a holistic approach to support. And so you're speaking my language.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And, you hit the nail right on the head when we talk about disinvestment in underserved communities, particularly BIPOC communities.
Yeah,
And, if we look at, especially in the Deep South, right? So if
that's
we
right.
look at a lot of these, disenfranchisement, it's at a variety of different levels, from infrastructure to access to capital, and they're all tied together. So a lot of the work that we do at LISC, and Rural LISC in particular, is we have a network of our on-the-ground partners. So that L in LISC, that
Nice.
stands for local. So
That's
we
right.
take our cue from our local partners that
Nice.
know the economy, the community, they know the priority projects, and what's really important. And so we have a partnership base of about 150 partners. These are economic development organizations,
Nice.
they're housing organizations, CHOTOs, CAP agencies, CDCs, 2-year, 4-year universities, a variety of different types of organizations. And what we do with our partners is we help to fundraise, to deploy money out for capacity supports for key community development projects,
Mm-hmm.
including broadband, and including lending assistance, including microloans. And we have 5-pillar approach. Our overarching investment areas, creative capital. So we do a lot with lending, and again, small business grants and other grant opportunities. But programmatically, we invest in communities in terms of broadband and infrastructure, their
Mm.
housing concerns, their workforce development challenges,
Wow.
their small business supports, right? And
Wow.
a little bit of work also on disaster solutions. So it's a very holistic way in which we look at community development. And then because we know that rural in particular has so many needs, and oftentimes, particularly in remote areas, little capacity. So
That's
what we
right.
try to do is provide grant dollars to build up capacity supports, and then we layer in our programming. So maybe you started off as a financial opportunity center with us, and then we help layer in digital programming and digital skilling. So then you learn how to cross train for digital skills, how to deploy the equipment, how to take advantage of different broadband services, including ACP, which is the broadband subsidy program,
Right.
how to connect to internet opportunities, and all the other skilling that goes along with that. And then let's link digital skilling to workforce development, right? Because you need both. You
That's
cannot
right.
talk about placing and skilling folks up in quality jobs without giving them also the resources that they need from a digital skilling perspective. And so all of these programs kind of tie together, and that's really how we try to achieve our work within Rolldesk.
Wow. First of all, I'm just going to say I didn't know all this. Because a lot of times I get information about Lisk and I share it. I'm a part of a group, Women in the Black, with Princess Jenkins being our president and Pat Stevenson being our vice president. I'm the secretary. We share a lot of information with BIPOC businesses on opportunities, and lists often run across my desk as one of those that are offering grants and offering some sort of information around building, growing, and thriving in your business. I had no idea. No, no idea that you guys were offering so much. And so I definitely will share that with my community. And for all of those that are listening today, we have Caitlin Kane. Caitlin Kane is an urban planner. She's a certified economic developer. She's the vice president of Lisk and a director of Rule List. But more importantly, she is my sister from another mister. And so she's sharing all these great nuggets about Lisk and its holistic approach to making sure that small businesses are not just starting, but they are thriving and growing, and that they're laying on, I like what she says, layering on programming. So you're not just offering financial solutions, you're also layering all the other things that small businesses need. And one thing I can tell you, Caitlin, because I play in a small business space with small business development, small business have a variety of needs and they don't have a lot of time. Right. And so it's really interesting that you guys are not just a cookie cutter approach, because a lot of times that's a huge barrier for my small business. They're saying everyone's offering something, but then they need so much more of my time than I can give. And so they'll pass on it until they can't pass anymore. And so what I hear you saying is local is the way to go, right? So making sure that you have local organizations, or those local community-based organizations, nonprofit and for-profit organizations, as well as community leaders, community groups, all working together, because like you said, they're the ones that understand the space better than anyone else can come in and sort of like save them, right? They know what they need. One of the other questions I'm going to ask, because we talked a lot about the technical support, which is huge, especially in my region. Technical support is huge. We talked about access to capital, which is also very, very huge. But one of the other components is marketing. My business, especially pre-COVID, and then Anthony can attest to this. I always say it: with obstacles become opportunities. A lot of my business didn't feel like marketing was key in their business until they needed to, right? Until they now had to get out there and let individuals know. They had to get out, whether it was on a social media platform or whether it was in emails or whatever the avenue that they chose. They had to get out and tell consumers and prospective consumers that they were still in business and they needed them to come back. So how important is that, or is that a barrier that you've run into? Because you're really servicing the rural areas of BIPOC businesses that I have an honor and opportunity to also service here in New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Connecticut, and throughout. Like, what are some of the things that you're seeing? Because we're offering nuggets here. So what are some of the barriers? And then what are some of the best practices that you guys are seeing that work? Because that's what we want to offer. We don't want to just tell our business about the problems, the barriers, right, or the obstacles. We want to tell them about the opportunities, or we want to give them some nuggets so they can think about creating those opportunities for themselves. Because with adversity becomes definitely, an opportunity for them to do more, be more, grow more, and just thrive. So talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So resources. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, right? Is how do we connect more of our small businesses
That's
to resources? Right. So there are quite a few resources that are out there. So the way that we really work with our small businesses is we help to support the ecosystem, the small business ecosystem. So we have 150 on the ground partners that we work with. Right. And of those 150, we have 54 business development organizations that we call BDOs. And essentially, these organizations help to support myriad types of small businesses, all in rural communities. So these are populations of about 50,000 or less. So rural small businesses are really interesting, right? And unique because they are the pillars of these communities, right? They are providing
Right.
so
They
many
are. Yeah,
essential services.
that's
And
right.
as a rural small business, it's not unusual for you to be the small business owner, the mayor of the town, maybe the part-time librarian. You wear so many different caps at any point in time. So, to your point earlier, you're doing everything as a small business owner. You have no time
That's
to
right.
try to figure out how to connect in to these sort of different elements. So understanding how you belong within an ecosystem, if
Hmm.
you're a rural small business, becomes that much more important, right? So you have to really have and gel into a bigger network, because that
That's right.
network will pass those tidbits of information on to you. So we spend a lot of time like, how do we cultivate that network? And so part of that network is providing sort of resource events and fairs to our rural businesses. And there are a number of different federal agencies that provide small business supports. We talk a lot about SBA. I won't go there because I know you talk a lot also about SBA.
We do. We do.
But since we're talking about rural, I'll talk about USDA, which is a
That's right.
lot of investment in our rural communities and has quite a variety of different resources for small businesses. So
Hmm.
if you're interested in learning more about what those opportunities are, particularly on lending opportunities, a lot more opportunities coming out of IRA in terms of how to adopt more green tech, how to take advantage of tax credits from IRA. All of those sort of different subsidies are much more pronounced now. So if you go to USDA.gov, you'll learn a little bit more about what some of those resources are. The White House has actually put out a great fact sheet about IRA and what it means for small businesses too. So I really encourage more small businesses to check out that fact sheet. SBA, as you all know, has its own great information, SBA.gov. There are a number of different resources at the federal level that small businesses can take advantage of, including the SBDCs within
Hmm.
each states. But more importantly, since I'm on here and we're talking a little bit about CDFIs, I think it's really important for small businesses to connect with their community development financial institutions. Their
Mm.
CDFIs come in all shapes and sizes. LISC is a very large national CDFI, but there are also smaller CDFIs, and these CDFIs sometimes focus on very key regions and key sectors of opportunity, including small businesses.
That's right.
So CDFIs are essentially provide money from commercial lenders to re-lend in underserved areas. And we re-lend at terms that are much more competitive, longer term, flexible in nature. And again, you're getting that wraparound technical assistance. So if you're not familiar with your CDFIs, I'd really encourage you to get to know more of the CDFIs in your region and understand the sort of resources that they can bring to bear for your small business. One other opportunity I really want to talk about in terms of resources for small businesses is procurement, right?
That's right. That's right. We talk about that a lot here. Hmm.
Yeah. And so if you're a small business, you really, and again, this gets back to the ecosystem approach, you really need to take advantage of some of the contracts, whether it's at a university, a
That's right.
hospital, whatever that anchor institution might be, and understand how to navigate that procurement process. And sometimes if you don't have those answers, somebody else in that ecosystem network will,
That's
and
right.
you can figure out how to team with other businesses. So maybe if you don't have that track record of 2 to 4 years or whatever it might be of history and experience, you can always partner and be a
That's
sub
right. That's
prime,
right.
right? And to take advantage of that contract. And now you're building up that history and you're getting mentored by the prime along the way.
That's
And so
right.
that's a great way and a different strategy to think about as you're trying to access some of these new markets. And then once you get that history, then you can open yourself up into federal procurement opportunities, including
Or
how to
local procurement opportunities as well. Hmm.
international, how to go global, the
That's
lot of
right.
contracts out there. And so that sort of mentor protege relationship within a small business mindset becomes really important.
And I want to pause right there for a minute because we're talking about $1 billion spend here. The government purchases everything from paper clips to planes and any and everything in between. And so a lot of what I do in my business, Caitlin, is I get my small businesses certified. And so through the NWBE certification process or the 8A certification process or getting them on a GSA schedule, they're then able to hunt. So Denise Pease used to be the former regional administrator for GSA. We used to say the certification is the license to hunt. Now you got to go out and get the game, right?
Exactly.
So, it's not going to come fall in your lap. And so, what I do is I help my small businesses by connecting them, like you said, in the ecosystem, connecting them to other small businesses that are doing similar jobs or that can piggyback on the job that they're doing. So, for here in New York, we have a New York State certification, a New York City certification. Of course, there's all of the federal certifications. So, wherever, what state or city you're in, you're able to get on the diversity council. You're able to apply for some of these NWBE opportunities, and you're able to get out there and get the work. Department of Education is huge here with their training opportunities. We also have, of course, HHS, like Health and Human Services, with everything going on with COVID. Every corner I turned, there was a training facility. Someone was getting these contracts. And so, what I'll encourage anyone that's listening today, whether you're in the U.S. Virgin Islands or in Puerto Rico, whether you're listening to us in the States, take advantage of this $1 billion spend. Get certified, get your paperwork together, make sure that you're filing your taxes, make sure that you're an organized business, make sure that you are keeping track of all of the different certifications that you may need, and get out there and like Caitlin said, get out there and get some of these opportunities, whether it's a subprime opportunity where you're working with a prime and you're being mentored, as Caitlin just mentioned, or whether you're actually going after some of the smaller contracts to build your experience so that you can then go and get some of the bigger contracts. And so I want to pause there because this is a great opportunity for individuals listening to take advantage of that spin. In addition to just taking advantages of those NWBE opportunities. The other thing that I'll encourage in those that are listening, Caitlin is on. LISC is doing a lot of wonderful things. Go on to the LISC website. There is, Caitlin said, it's a holistic approach. We're not just doing, the CDFIs aren't, and LISC aren't just doing the financing, but there's the technical support. They're part of the ecosystem. It's local. The L in LISC make this opportunity available to anyone and everyone, whether you're in a rural or urban area. And so I encourage you, whoever's listening today, please get on, figure out what LISC is doing. I promise you, there is something on that website that can assist you with getting it to the next level. Because I've even found opportunities on the list that I was able to share with my clients, and they were able to take advantage of some of those things. I want to thank you so much, especially for mentioning that contracting. Now, I do have a question for you, Caitlin, because one of the things that a couple of my business ran into, they were able to get the contract, so they were able to get the license to hunt. Operational cost was a barrier. So they realized they got the contract. They had the capacity to do the work. They had to build some things out on online because, of course, COVID made some things asynchronous and synchronous. And so that simply means that they were doing a lot of the work online and some was hybrid, right? But that costs money. They didn't have the operational costs to execute the contract. Are those opportunities available through LISC? And if so, I want to talk a little bit about how to give access to some of the businesses that are listening. They're saying, okay, yeah, I got the contract, I have the capacity. How do I mesh the two of them so that I can be successful in this contracting world?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm going to take one step back and want to link this to the comment that you made earlier in terms of adversity relating to opportunity, right?
That's
and
right.
I know a lot of our audience is in Puerto Rico and USVI right now, which is in areas that are heavily impacted by natural disaster, right?
That's right.
So if you're a small business operating one of these areas, part of a resilience plan mindset as it relates to contracting is to think about how to get into the federal system.
That's
So
right.
if you are a food-based business, maybe you do catering. And now you can, think about how can you position your business to do long-term catering to a lot of the disaster support services that might get propped up as part of the recovery efforts, right? So there are a lot of services that are associated with disaster-related work that happen in some of these geographies that are federal in nature,
That's right.
where you can kind of really benefit from understanding and positioning yourself longer term within that federal procurement system.
Let's pause right there because we're going to have to take a quick break, but I want you to come back and talk a little bit about that federal procurement system and how we can get our businesses ready to be able to play in that space, especially with the natural disasters. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Thank you so much.
Time. It has a different meaning in the U.S. Virgin Islands. It goes backwards, forwards, it stops. St. Croix is rooted in history. So much of it still remains untouched.
I remember running on these streets as a kid. This trap was right down there. It opened the same year I was born. This is where the original Crucian hook was born. It's the symbol of these islands. And I wanted to have my hands in that very same history. I want to be able to pass it down to my family while still putting a new spin on it.
The U.S. Virgin Islands, we have an amazing culture that developed over time from all over the world.
St. John feels so untouched. Being underwater is like another world. There's no worries, there's no stress. I can just escape. This is my happy place. My passion for scuba diving came at just being fascinated with the water and wanting to be a mermaid. And this is the closest thing I can get to achieving mermaid status. Canadians just love being outdoorsy. We live for adventure, so we love anything hiking, being on the water, diving, snorkeling, and St. John has it all.
It's like some spirit is protecting the island and keeping them raw. The Makajumbi watches over the island. From up there, they keep the evil spirits away. The nightlife in St. Thomas is absolutely amazing. There's always something going on. Everyone comes together to dance and catch a vibe. We're always celebrating. We celebrate freedom, culture, the food, the smell, the music. It's always a celebration. The people here are probably the most priceless thing because they keep the culture going. There's so many different influences on these islands. Food from all kinds of countries coming together in new dishes. All of us came from somewhere, but all of we call this home. The VI is a new melting pot. This is where the past and the future comes together.
Metro New York's port services are currently constrained and challenged in facilitating the handling of international cargo. It's time for a whole new ballgame. Just 55 miles north of the city, Stewart Airport, closed during the base realignment, is an underutilized resource that could be maximized and bring growth to the area and relieve New York City. It's an ideal place for a thriving supply chain center of regional excellence, called SCORE. We intend to support the New York and New Jersey Port Authority's commitment to the New York International Plaza, putting it at the forefront of a transformation of regional global trade, telecommunications, and economic growth. A logistics-based regenerative smart city that supplies an interactive platform of data and document interoperability to optimize resources. SCORE will transform this location into a thriving hub that can process and distribute cargo via various methods of transportation, elevating it to one of the world's best intermodal ports. We aim to build a cybersecure network operations center that enables customers to share data in real time across the supply chain and across the whole region, utilizing eco-friendly practices to keep things running efficiently. And it doesn't stop there. Not only will SCORE develop high-speed wireless networks in a data-driven city to improve logistics and facilitate international trade, it will also create critical infrastructure for regional economic development. By optimizing the business environment, attracting startups and investment, supporting the development of high-value industries such as medical, education, technology, and hospitality, creating new employment opportunities for the region. SCORE will inject vibrancy and inspire prosperity in an underutilized area to develop a greener and more livable smart city that thrives, bringing excellence to the Hudson Valley. It's a game changer. Visit IC Logistics to learn how you can support this SCORE Economic Development Initiative at Stewart Airport.
Welcome back.
Hello.
Welcome back. I'm truly excited. You just don't understand how happy I am to have you on the show. You have so much. Listeners just doing so much. I mean, it's a fabulous opportunity for anyone listening. Again, you're watching us now on OurTV.network. I encourage you to download the app so that you can get a recap of all of the wonderful information that Caitlin Kane is sharing with us today. You can also watch us on Amazon TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Roku, Tempo, and of course, www.ourtv.network. You can listen to us on the radio at WSTX Bloomberg. So when we took our quick commercial break, Caitlin was talking to us about some of those opportunities, especially with all the natural disasters going on. We started talking about procurement, started talking about certifications, and then Caitlin was pivoting into how you can get some of those opportunities now. And then Caitlin, I think it's really important that we're pivoting into this because I know when Maria happened, and we were on our way out of one administration, another administration was coming in. There were a lot of opportunities that were given to mainland, especially for the Virgin Islands. And of course, we're very partial to the Virgin Islands. Anthony is our producer in the Virgin Islands now. And I had an opportunity to call up DSA and Army Corps of Engineers and SBA and say, hey, you have certified 8A business firms that are in the Virgin Islands that are able to do the work. And so we started talking about some of the catering services. That was one of the services that they were able to get, the persons that were in the Virgin Islands, those opportunities. So that's why I was like, yes, this is what we want to talk about. So talk about some of that. I mean, I'm sure you've had a lot of experience with it, with the administration, of course, because you've covered your area and New Orleans. I know we had an opportunity to talk about some of the things that happened and recap some of the things that happened and what we could do better when we looked at Katrina. But talk to us about some of those opportunities now moving forward to those businesses that are able to get these certifications, get on this GSA schedule, be a part of Army Corps of Engineers, and offer their widgets or their product or their services or their catering opportunities. Talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk about it in a two-pronged way because I think there's a responsibility on both sides, right?
Okay.
There's what the small businesses can do to best position themselves, their business, to take advantage of different opportunities. And then on the other side of that equation is what can anchor institutions do better and major regional employers in terms of breaking down these contracts to allow for more opportunity for small, micro, minority businesses to take advantage of procurement opportunities.
Mhm.
So I'll start with the latter first and then kind of go into the small business. So some of the work that we do at LIST is really looking at sort of procurement opportunities and like really kind of help one kind of create education around the significance of procurement. If you are a regional employer, if you are a bigger business, how can you break down those contracts a little bit?
Yes.
And break them down so that they're a little bit more manageable for truly the local small businesses to take advantage of those sort of contract opportunities, whether it's an IT contract, a landscaping opportunity, a food-based catering service opportunity, whatever it might be.
Right.
But allowing that contract officer to have that ability and the flexibility to break apart that contract so that we can keep more of those services local and build up that small business base. This is going to be really important in key economies, rural in particular, because those are all small businesses.
That's right.
If you're lucky, with a few major anchor institutions like a hospital or a regional employer or an island area. USVA is a great example of this. Puerto Rico is another great example of this, where tourism and are such a significant part of the local economy, and those need smaller base contracts. So those are all small, truly small businesses that really play in that space.
That's right.
And oftentimes the ability to play in that space is your access to the capital and achieving that so that you can compete for that contract opportunity, right? And you're never going to be able to compete if the contract is too big.
That's right. Because you don't have the capacity and you don't get a do-over. You don't get a do-over. So you need to be able to do it and do it right the first time. Right.
Right. So there is a responsibility on the anchor institution side, on the regional employer side, to think about how can I do this better? What is my responsibility to my local community, to my regional community, to my small business community, to start thinking about how do I show up for my small businesses in this area? What can I do to break these contracts? On the other side of the equation, it's the small business, right? What can you do to best position yourself to take advantage of some of those opportunities? And this is where we talk a lot about really understanding how to navigate that federal, state procurement and local procurement space, getting the right sort of certifications in place on the front end so that you're ready to compete for that contract. And if you don't have that capacity, and you had brought this up earlier in the conversation about you had a business that was able to receive that contract but didn't have the capacity to fulfill it, thinking about a team building approach as part of your overarching strategy, right? So if you know that you potentially could bid, you could potentially be successful on X contract, but you might not have the necessary skill set in a variety of different contacts, who can you team with to provide you with that, right? And start there. You don't have to do everything yourself. You can really partner in a creative way to pull down that contract to give you that history that you need, whether it's with a private sector employer, but even more so on the public sector side, because you need that track record, right, in order to kind of go and grow your business and become a prime. And then you can also really benefit from just that mentoring that comes along with you in a secondary position at a larger company, maybe in that prime position for the first few years, to get yourself more situated so they can be competitive to go after these contracts on your own, including accessing commercial lending opportunities. So now you can do that bridge loan, right, to allow you to staff up when you get that contract and really be able to perform to the degree needed for whatever that contract happens to be.
Awesome. So one of the things I want to step back, because one of the things that you started off with was those anchor institutions, making sure that the anchor institutions and the certification officers and all of these people are playing in the same sandbox and able to break these contracts apart, and so that they are, because it's rural, right? And so these small businesses are able to get a part of this contract, this access to capital, right? I think one of the things that we need to add is relationships. The relationships part, right? I think it's really, really important to, and LIST is doing this because everything is local. And I even say this in the political world, all politics is local. It may look like it's federal or it looks like it's national or international, but all of it's local. Same thing with small business, right? So if we have these contractors, if we have these certification analysts that are actually a part of the community, and they understand, and this is something that you and I had an opportunity, Caitlin, to do when we were at advocacy, because the regulatory concerns were always the top of the mind for us, and so we were able to have conversations with those individuals that were actually creating the RFPs and giving them, and letting them know what our businesses were saying, what the barriers, the best practices, and big ideas, and they actually were able to put some of that language to make sure that these businesses actually had these opportunities. The same thing I just gave an example of is the U.S. Virgin Islands, making sure that those that are highly impacted by these disasters are able to get this work because the economy is suffering. We want to bring the money back into the economy. So the relationship part of that is key to making sure that that this is going to be successful.
Right.
Right. So
That's
that's what I wanted to add. The other part of it is that second tier part of it is actually the business, right? Not being afraid to go in as a sub. Like a lot of my businesses, when you start having conversations with them, they want the big piece of the pie. And when I start breaking it down to them of what the capacity level and the needs are, they aren't really able at that capacity to do that amount of work. And I have to tell them over and over again, you don't get a do over. With the government, you don't get a do over. So what you don't want to do is to get into a position that you are asked to deliver, that you're contracted, you're not just asked, you're contracted to deliver on this specific thing and you can't because of the capacity, right? So it's really important to understand your capacity level. Don't be afraid to team. Don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. There's tons of technical support available now, more so than ever, and a lot of it's online. So if we all have the same 24 hours in a day, and I say that most of my small business need 22 of those 24 hours. So that other 2 hours when you're trying to get some sleep and eat, you can check out a video and figure out how to do some things better. So I think it's really important to highlight those two things when you're one, if you're a small business, and if you're in that space of an anchor institution, and you're looking to service a small business, especially the rural, the small businesses, we have to have those relationships in place and know what people need, know what businesses need, so that we can help them be successful.
Absolutely. And I think too, this kind of speaks when we're talking about the ecosystem, the role of other small business support organizations out there, right? The chambers and some of these other trade associations to also advocate on behalf of the small businesses with regional players, with where opportunities exist, on ways to really kind of think about breaking down those contracts for those small businesses, for the true small businesses.
The relationships, yeah. The relationships. One of the things that I want to add here, I have the absolute pleasure to be able to work with my Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce and to work with my Greater Chamber of Commerce on some of those opportunities. And so right now we're doing a Brooklyn Entrepreneurship Academy that I'll be taking part in. And a lot of that is the relationships, bringing the mentors and the consultants, bringing in the small businesses, having them pitch, giving them the expertise that they need to take their businesses to the next level. And it's because of those relationships that we're able to bring to bear all that we have, our knowledge, our skills, our ability, and the connections. I always say that my business is about connecting because relationships matter. And so we never leave relationships out of anything that we're doing. And we also make sure it's a holistic approach. Not every single business needs every single thing. Not every single business is going to ask for every single thing, but we need to put things in place so whatever they do need, we're able to offer it to them. And that's why I'm so excited to have you on, Caitlin, because like I said, LISC has this holistic approach that I was not familiar with. And so now I'm able to share a lot of what you guys are doing, not just with LISC, but rural LISC as well. Because a lot of our businesses that are listening now, if you're listening to us in Southeast Asia, if you're listening to us throughout the Caribbean, if you're listening in some of these other smaller areas, you now understand that LISC is available to you in these 49 states, but also in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. And so it's really exciting to have you on to talk about some of those things, Caitlin. So thanks again for being a part of this. I don't want to just talk about the barriers. I want to talk about the best practices and some of the big ideas. So can you share with us like some of the, we always used to do our big ideas, and I like to give my business energy, right? So what are some of the big ideas that have come out of the work that you're doing now? Or best practices? What are some of the best practices? One of them is that anchoring, right? Those relationships. What else can you add to those that are listening today so that they can walk away with some solutions?
Yeah, I think from where I sit, the innovation is, there's so much innovation happening in our rural communities, our smaller towns, or more remote areas. It's unbelievable how much is happening in these areas, right, with oftentimes such limited resources and investment. And I think it's the most successful communities and or small businesses that I've seen that have really been able to flourish during hard times have been able to really double down on some of the things that you had just mentioned, right? It's the relationship, and more so than probably anything, it's pulling together what the resources that you have and leveraging that relationship so you can understand where the opportunity is, not just where you are today, but where do you plan to be, 5, 10 plus years out, right? What does that sort of trajectory look like? And how do you need to position your business to be able to get there? And in terms of like big, bold ideas or, on the access to capital side, what I have seen for truly the small businesses is really that need for flexible, longer term capital that can be readily deployed. And there are now kind of a number of different organizations that are popping up that are hoping to kind of fill that gap in that space. But micro lending is becoming for rural areas, and especially for our island friends, very, very important for these small businesses. And so from when we're talking with funders and other givers into this space, is kind of being cognizant of the diverse nature of small businesses, right? Because I think, people would like to define rural as one thing. It is diverse. Right?
Yeah, it is.
Small businesses are so diverse with so many different needs. And we need to be able to fill all those sort of different tranches of need. So really creative approaches to financing are absolutely critical. Being able to layer that financing in. And some of these ecosystems are doing some really amazing work in terms, especially for rural communities, of bringing down those sort of resources and celebrating those resources and opportunities in a way that's very unique to them. I just went to an event called Radically Rural. It was amazing. It was in Keene, New Hampshire, and it brought people from all over the place. And, they were celebrating all the local food-based culture, the local textiles, the innovation, the tech, decarbonizing the lawn care industry, ways of doing that. I mean, like everything was there in these sort of rural communities. And they're working together to figure out how can we refine business strategies, business plans, working together to figure out how can I help you leverage some of these other resources. You hear about this other resource over here. It might not be in our region, but it's over there, and you can
That's
still
right.
down. So I think that, like, if I'm doing a call to action to everyone, it's just, you're not alone. You might feel like you're in the silo right here, but these resources are out there.
That's right. And now they're even more accessible because of the internet, because of online. You can actually now Google Radically Rural and see, some of the things that happen there, and maybe have access to some of that if they're online already with whatever, because I'm sure they had some footage, right? So that is awesome. That's awesome, right? And one of the things I want to add, and I didn't add it early on, but I'm co-founding a group called Backers, right? And so what we're going to do is just that. We're going to do microloans within certain zip codes, and we're going to be giving money to individuals simply because of my experience, simply because of these barriers and best practices and big ideas that we've been discussing today, making sure that local business, putting the L back in local, right? That local business are able to invest in other local business. And I think that is going to be the game changer. And so Backers is here, and we're looking forward to working closely throughout the country, because like you said, this radically rural idea is not a new idea. Like, making sure that these businesses have what they need, we're asking them what they need. We're not going to them and saying, here's what you need, right? And I think that's really important. Back to those relationships, this is awesome. Yo, Caitlin, you've got me like on 100. I'm like, all of the things that we can do, all the things that we can do together, looking at the whole ecosystem, right? And thinking about all the opportunities that we get to do together, again, on another level, on a greater level, simply because there are no boundaries anymore. We have the internet. We have opportunities to get things to people pretty quickly, especially our small business. So, it's funny how time flies when you're having fun. So we're almost at the end of the segment, but I want to give you the last 60 seconds to kind of really, bring it home. Is there something that you want to leave with those listeners today of all that we discussed? Because you gave a lot of nuggets, right? And so they get to come back and listen to it again and get their pencils out. But what's something that you want to leave with them that we may not have covered already?
Yeah,
Just reiterate it.
absolutely. Okay. And in terms of resources, please get to know your CDFIs in your local region,
Yes.
all the different funds and or grant resources. Sometimes they differ by region that you might be able to take advantage of. Those CDFIs are also plugged into what we also talked about, relationships.
That's right.
So they really leverage public and private relationships, so that the relationship with you and that CDFI can also help you tap into other resources, whether it's at the federal level, the state
That's
level,
right.
or through private philanthropy that might be out there too, that just might not be on your radar. But by leveraging that relationship, you might be able to then leverage some additional resources. And in terms of kind of bigger, bolder ideas, I love the idea of backers. I think this is great. I think small business giving to small business learning from other small businesses is exactly what it needs to be. Who better to do that than other small businesses that have lived that day in and day out? And so a lot of the work that we try to do as a CDFI also is in response to needs.
That's right.
So the more that your CDFIs also kind of really truly understand what your particular needs are in your community, that's very powerful information, because we do more than just lend. We also create programs.
That's right.
We're in a position of really wanting to create programs that work the best at the local level.
Awesome.
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
the opportunity to chat about this. This has been wonderful.
Awesome. I'm going to have to bring you back on again, because this was really a great experience. So all of you, this is Caitlin Kane, and she is our Vice President of LIST and Director of Rural LIST. And you can go back on and listen to us again. I just want to thank you again, Caitlin, for bringing the nuggets and making sure that we all understand what LIST is doing, but more importantly, that we all understand that we're a part of this process, and we're how the process continues to go, to grow, and to thrive. Thanks for being a part of the Coaxum Report.
Thanks, Terry.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
It would be good if we could directly import some of this from right on the farm fresh here, so it would help our produce section. But certain things, we have to admit that we can't grow in the Virgin Islands because of our temperature. Certain things grow better when they have a little cool temperature. But the collaboration is what we want, where we can exchange processes, and we can do something down here, like the wine country we spoke about. Most of the wine made up here is from, all of it is from grape. We make wine in the Virgin Islands or the Caribbean from other fruits. So even that as an exchange can be something good, since they seem to be proficient in making wine. We have certain fruits that we would like to be better at in making wine. Those collaborations can be a good thing.
Yeah, these type of economic exchanges also allow us to see what other people are doing and create ideas that we can bring back home in regard to that. So it's great to see how this farm is operating, not only in the blackberry patch that we're in, but tomatoes, corn, a variety of different things.
I hope you got those on the video. That's big beefy tomatoes. Again, I don't even eat tomatoes, and I wanted to take a bite into one. Fresh food growing is a big thing. Like you hear that they have a roadside. every day. They out there roadside, fresh farm, fresh market. They said they didn't even intend to do it, but it's been so good. So they kept on doing it, and that's what we want farmers to do. From the farm to the stand to the table. You want to decrease the amount of stops the food make from the farm to the table. The shorter, the quicker you can get from farm to table, the better we're doing, and the better food we're supplying to our residents.
All right, and we're here to continue to support agriculture. As you know, in our Vision 2040, agrotech and agriculture is, one of our main industries. So we need to continue to grow that. It has great potential.
It's a small industry that a lot of people can. I don't want to call it a small industry, but it's a cottage industry that a lot of people can participate in. But collectively, it's big. Food is big. Food is an inflexible commodity. One thing we do each and every day is buy food. So the more food we can have providing at home, that's more job. That's better for the economy because money's spreading across.